It's Wednesday, May 13th. I want to welcome everybody to the committee meeting. I'm joined by two of the members, Mr. Cardenas and Mr. Reyes. So we do have a quorum. We're going to take up some of the non-controversial items now. And I think we have one item scheduled for discussion. So, Ms. Barclay, why don't you read items 1 through 9 and 11?
Yes, sir. Meg Barclay with the CLA. Item 1 is a report from the Community Redevelopment Agency relative to the status of the Land Acquisition Fund.
Okay, on item 1, we'll continue that item. Item 2?
Item 2 is a report from the CRA and the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to construction and permanent loan agreement for the proposed development of the Andalusia Senior Apartments.
Okay, then item 2 will adopt the CLA report. Item 3?
Item 3 is a report from the CRA and the City Attorney and the CLA relative to an ordinance and extend the date of effectiveness for the Earthquake Disaster Assistance Redevelopment Plan for East Hollywood, Beverly, Normandy.
Okay, on item 3, we will continue item 3. Item 4?
Item 4 is a report from the CRA and the CLA relative to increasing a purchase order for legal services related to the condemnation of properties for the Slauson Central Shopping Center project.
Okay, on item 4, we'll adopt the CLA report. Item 5?
Item 5 is a report from the CRA and the City Administrative Officer and a resolution and public hearing relative to the acquisition of property for $800,000 from the City of Los Angeles and execution of a disposition and development agreement with University Muslim Medical Association.
Okay, item 5 will adopt the CAO report. Item 6?
Item 6 are reports from the CRA and the CLA relative to an amendment to the contract with Single Room Occupancy Housing Corporation for continued programming, operation, maintenance, and administration of emergency and other housing developments and services for the homeless.
Okay, on this item, we'll adopt the CLA report. Item 7?
Item 7 is a report from the CRA and the CLA relative to expanding the boundaries for redevelopment survey area number 2, encompassing portions of the Atwater Village and Glassell Park communities.
Okay, item 7 will adopt the CLA report. That brings us to item 8.
Item 8 are reports from the LAHD and the CAO relative to requests for qualifications for bond underwriters, financial advisors, trustees, auditors, accountants, and other master services.
Item 8 will adopt the CAO report. Item 9.
Item 9 is a motion, Wesson Reyes, relative to converting the capacity building loan provided to the Pacific Asian Consortium into a grant.
Mr. City Attorney,
Yes, sir.
who are the makers of this motion?
The Honorable Chair and Vice Chair of this committee.
So, Alan, what do we do with this?
We approve it.
All right. So, item 9 will adopt the motion. Item 11? You don't tell. 11?
Item 11 is a report from the CDD and CAO relative to the status of and authority to make adjustments on economic development projects utilizing site-specific tax revenues for debt payment obligations.
Okay, we'll continue item 11. So without objection, these items will be deemed approved.
And 1 was continued, correct?
Or continued.
No, 3 was continued. Oh, yeah. Item 1 was continued, 3 was continued, 11 was continued. That brings us to item 10.
Item 10 is a motion, Parks Perry, relative to the feasibility of expanding the utility maintenance program and/or creating a new program that would require property owners of foreclosed properties to pay all utility bills.
Okay, I believe we have the department people here so that we can talk about this. Unfortunately, this is becoming a problem. Good morning.
Good morning, council members. Good morning, Chairman Wesson. During the last legislative session last year, the state legislature tried to address this issue with regards to utilities and foreclosures. There were several bills. One of them would have expanded the rights of tenants in single-family homes to be able to do what tenants can do under state law in multifamily properties, which is to deduct utility payments from the rent. That bill was vetoed by the governor. And there was another bill which would have prohibited shut-off of utilities after foreclosure. That bill was also vetoed by the governor. So what the Housing Department did in response was to work with the Department of Water and reached an agreement to deal with situations regarding utilities in foreclosures. And we have an agreement with them which we forged in October of last year. And essentially what this agreement does is that LADWP has agreed to provide a written notification of a pending utility shutoff to the Housing Department's urgent repair program at least 60 days before a scheduled shutoff, to maintain or restore service upon notification from the Housing Department to DWP's Customer Services Division on a case-by-case basis in a foreclosed situation. Also to establish an account in the name of a bank and lender after foreclosure in order to facilitate the maintenance of utilities and to accept payments to this account from any person. And on a case-by-case basis, the Department of Water and Power will also waive the security deposit requirement following a shutoff due to foreclosure when the affected tenants open a new account under a responsible party's name, excluding a bank representative. And the responsible bank would need to make a regular application in order to do that. They wouldn't have the write-off of a security deposit. So we have established this program with them, and we've been working with them on a case-by-case basis as these situations arise with us as well. And most important of all, in order to address the situation, is we're working to address the situation through an earlier motion that this committee put forward, which is the foreclosure registry, and to really take a look at how to get a handle on the various issues that develop around a foreclosure. The foreclosure registry will, one of the most important things it will do is it will require banks to provide us with local contact information so that various city agencies, enforcement agencies, be it the Department of Building and Safety, the City Attorney's Office, the Housing Department, and the Department of Water and Power have somebody that they can speak with and to arrive at an agreement with in terms of all of these various issues that have been addressed by various motions, including utility shutoffs. We will certainly take a look at what is recommended in this motion, whether the utilities maintenance program can in fact be an additional asset in addressing this issue. The utilities maintenance program is currently a program that's restricted to rent-stabilized properties, and the trigger for it is a referral from the Department of Water and Power. And the Department of Water and Power has usually found other ways in which they could go after delinquent landlords. But nevertheless, it may be a useful asset in addressing this issue, and if it needs to, we will recommend any modifications in our report back. I've asked Meg Barkley, who's working with us on this foreclosure registry motion, to also to add anything else that she thought would be important to bring to your attention at this point.
Meg Barkley with the CLA's office. We have been having a series of productive meetings with our office, the CAO, Building and Safety, and the City Attorney, and a couple of the council offices on the initial motion to establish the registry, and we can add this to the registration requirement as far as notifying lenders when they take control of a property that it's their responsibility to pay the utilities or to provide the department who'd be administering the registry with assurances that the utility costs would be addressed to avoid shut-off of any existing tenants or residents of those properties.
One of the things that we're looking to develop in this foreclosure registry is a sort of a maintenance plan. And that maintenance plan can be a rather expansive thing. So it can include, of course, how do you maintain utilities, how do you maintain the property free from blight, from have inspections so that there's no squatters or some of the other issues that we have discussed in previous HCED meetings, including those individuals who take over and set up some kind of a scam on a property. So those are the things that we're looking at developing as a component of the registry and requiring banks to provide.
Let me interrupt you for 1 minute because you talked about squatters and we had the hearing on it not too long ago. In fact, I think I just told Yolanda the last week, right after the hearing, about 3 days, there was squatters 2 streets over from where I live. So I talked them up. So we're not going to talk about squatters anymore. No, but anyway, it just shows how that is a growing problem. It just cropped up just like that.
And Council President Weston, we've actually followed up on that. As we discussed, we have sent an email blast request to Dunn to publicize the problem to all the different neighborhood councils and the representatives and constituents so that they are on the lookout and working with the police department to get a handle on this problem.
How big do we think this problem is where it relates to foreclosed properties and people kind of, getting stuck in the middle where it relates to their utility bills?
I don't think we have a handle on how big of a problem it is. In our discussions on the registry with the city attorney's office, it's estimated that about 25% of their nuisance abatement properties are vacant foreclosed properties. So that gives us an outside parameter of the nuisance problems. In terms of the squatter issue, that's more difficult to tell because it only arises in these case-by-case situations where there's a complaint or a neighbor brings it to our attention or the police department's attention.
So generally, what is a tenant required to pay?
In a typical landlord-tenant situation, tenants usually carry their own electricity and gas, and landlords are the ones who are usually responsible for the water and the sanitation, the trash. And so this is the part, that landlord part is the one that usually goes awry in a foreclosure situation. Either because the landlord already has stopped making those payments because they're simply moving towards bankruptcy, that's even on an unofficial level, or when the bank takes over, they don't have a structure or they haven't taken on to establish a structure for maintenance of the property. And so that's, in that scenario, is where we start to have problems where DWP stops receiving payments and has to move towards shut-off. And that's why we reached an agreement with DWP to address the situation. And I think approaching it systematically, as we intend to do in the foreclosure registry structure and through this motion, will allow us to get an even better handle on it.
Are things the same, let's say, if it's not an apartment complex, it's just a one house that somebody is leasing to?
Right. Well, for example, under state law, there is an established state law provision which allows a tenant in a multifamily property to be able to deduct their utility payments from the rent. And so that right was sought to be established, to be expanded to tenants in single-family homes, but the governor vetoed that. So that right is not there currently under state law, although I understand that there is some action afoot to try to revive that bill. The utility maintenance program, for example, it only applies to rent-stabilized properties, so it doesn't apply to a single-family home tenant. I think one of the things that's really important about the foreclosure registry idea is the biggest problem we've heard from all the different enforcement agencies is that they just don't have a local contact with the banks. When the banks actually make themselves aware, make themselves known to the different city entities, they're actually pretty responsive by and large. They have worked to abate a significant number of violations on properties in order to get them out of REAP or to avoid going into REAPer situations like that. And we're looking to see if we can carry that relationship into the registry.
Any other questions? Mr. Reyes?
When we look at the, and I know they're overloaded, but if you look at Legal Aid and Bensedic, the other entities that are probably taking on calls, probably have a waiting list of cases they can't get to. Maybe we hear it over and over again every time they come to this committee. Is there any way of cross-referencing those cases with addresses that are foreclosed so that we can get ahead of the curve and deal with these experiences people are having because they are in that dilemma?
Well, we certainly have it, and we'll continue to be in discussions with the different tenant advocacy organizations in terms of making sure that they bring problem cases to our attention. One of the things that I think that is important, I believe in responding to your question, Councilman Reyes, is that asking the Department of Water and Power to make us aware of all of the pending shutoffs so that we can take a look at those cases when the ones that fall into properties that are already in REAP, the ones that and the ones that we can act on to avoid a shutoff on in discussions with the Department of Water and Power.
Systemically, I think that's very strategic. I'm appealing to you on the human factor here. We've got people who are in a dilemma. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They can't afford an attorney, so they go to what is available to them. That's typically the agencies I was mentioning. As a way to cross-reference those cases, at least given our technology, just cross-references the address to see if we can be proactive on those cases.
We can certainly take a look at that, Councilman Reyes. There may be some issues in terms of attorney-client confidentiality in those situations, since typically those are legal services organizations and the complications which arise from
Right.
that. But we can certainly take a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, just been in my experience working in my district that usually if there is a case with Bethesda or Legal Aid Foundation, if the city does intercede, it's something we can fix and a good part of the problem goes away. It's just folks don't know how to engage the system. Again, everything we heard before, lack of language, understanding of how the system works, intimidation, because they are authority figures, all the things that we know about, especially in the immigrant community, and those that are citizens, I mean, they go through the same thing. So that's the area I'm exploring in this discussion.
Right, absolutely. Councilman Reyes, as you know, I used to be the director of one of those legal services organizations in East Los Angeles, and certainly we had a relationship. That organization still has a relationship, as do many of these entities that you're talking about, through the REAP outreach contractor process. And many of these distressed properties that face these situations are also in the REAP. And so we've been working with them to make sure that they bring to our attention any problems that are occurring specifically with regards to utility shutoff, even if the Department of Water and Power hasn't referred the case to UMP, so that we can act through the REAP funds that are available in staving a utility shutoff.
I got the sudden sense of comfort as soon as you said that. It's okay, now I'm listening to the real pros here. So I'm glad you're foreshadowing the issues that we're going to bring up because of your experience. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
I didn't even think about the sanitation piece of this. So, I mean, one day they just quit coming? I mean, and the tenants, is that basically what happens? The tenant wakes up one day and the landlord did not pay for have the garbage collected and...
You know, Councilman Wesson, we will take a look at that. It has not come to my attention that this is as significant of an issue as a utility shutoff for whatever reason, but certainly the same approach that we'll be taking with regards to the utility shutoff would apply to the sanitation component of what DWP does.
Okay. Any other questions? Then, without objection, we will adopt this motion. I thank you for your report, and we'll talk about this in the foreseeable future. I'm waiting for you, Ms. Barclay. I'm stalling.
Yes, sir.
We're dancing, we're dancing.
Any more business before this committee?
No, sir.
Then without objection, we are adjourned.